You are listening to Exploring Sacred with your host, Denise Iwana Francisco, on the Temple Within Radio and Digital Media Network, giving voice to the sacred.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Sacred and a beautiful Wednesday evening. Hey, Marianne. Hello, Lily Delgadillo. It is great to see you in the house tonight. Gee, it seems like it's been a really long time since we've all been together. Maybe because it has been. Since I was in Italy and Greece. I don't think I've been on a Wednesday night, but here we are all together, and I'm really excited about our conversation tonight. It's about when our soul and spirit call, and the calling of our soul, and the ways in which our soul calls to us and our spirit speaks to us. So I'm looking forward to that. And as you know, when we are together for Exploring Sacred, it's all about making sure that it's a two-way conversation. So I invite you to converse with me inside the chat room, and let's talk about some things. So this weekend at the Temple Within School of Sacred Studies, I'm going to be teaching a course, deep, high-level course, actually, advanced level course in spirituality. I'm looking forward to that. Sandra Herrick was going to be at the Temple Within School of Sacred Studies, and she has come under the weather, and so she will not be joining us. So we're sending lots of love and light to Sandy Herrick out there in New Hampshire as she gets back on her feet and back in the saddle, as they say. So if you care to like and share the show, that would be fantastic. And let's go. Got a lot to talk about tonight. When the soul and spirit call. I literally just wrapped up with my clients for the day. The clients started early this morning and continued on until about 15 minutes ago. So here I am, all like I've been in a whirlwind, because it kind of feels that way. But lots of talk today about when the spirit and when the soul call to us. The soul's avocation, the spirit's calling. How does the spirit call to us? How does the spirit teach us? How does our soul teach us? And who is it and what is it that spirit brings to us, our soul brings to us to teach us, to hone our skills, to learn who we really are? And do we have the courage to follow the voice of our soul? Do we have the courage to listen to what it is that the spirit, our spirit, is guiding us to do? It's not always as easy as it sounds to do that. And hello, Carla Jo. For those of you that are wondering what all is going on at the Temple Within School of Sacred Studies, you can check it out at deniseiwana.com. Go to the Temple Within pages. And got lots of great classes, including Carla Jo. She'll be with us in September. Good evening, Ruthie. Good to see you, Ruthie. Love all of those wonderful photos of you with your family on Facebook. Beautiful stuff. Donna Thompson, evening, y'all. Evening, y'all. So what about when our soul and our spirit call us? Sometimes our soul calls us to places that we think, really? You're calling me there? Why am I being directed to take myself to this place or to take myself away from that place? What is that all about? And I would venture to say that all of you that are watching right now or listening right now have exactly the experience that I'm talking about right now, and that is when the soul calls. And when the soul says it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to walk your soul's path, or as they say, shine your light. Our soul speaks to us in a variety of ways. Sometimes it speaks to us in our dream time. I just had a wonderful young client, 18 years old. Her mother brought her for her graduation gift to have a chat with me. So she and I just wrapped up, and we were talking about the way that soul speaks to her in her dream time. and the way that our ancestors speak to us in our dream time. The way that we converse with our spirit and in our soul can be very different during dream time than it can be during the waking time. And here's a for instance. During the time that we are dreaming, when our body is resting, when it is asleep, Spirit can speak to us in a myriad of ways. Through signs, through symbols, through direct connect with people from the other side of the veil, with our guides in spirit. Our allies, guardian angels, will come to us in our dream time to speak to us, to help lead us forward on this human journey, this lifetime that we're living. When we are dreaming, I happen to believe that life is a dream, whether we're awake or asleep, but nocturnal dream, or the dream that we have when our body is sleeping. Our higher self, our soul self, will talk to us in music, will talk to us in inspirations, in visitations from those that we love who have already gone home to spirit. We'll have those types of visitations as well when our soul is speaking. Sometimes our soul speaks to us in a very ancient language that only our soul knows, and we may wake up inspired. We may wake up with an inspiration to do something different, to pursue a particular avenue of study, to attend a class, to begin taking music lessons, whatever it happens to be. Our soul becomes inspired during the dream time. Sometimes we can remember what it is that we're dreaming about. Oftentimes we don't remember what it is that we've dreamed about. But I happen to believe that our dreams are more than just the culmination of everything that happened during the course of the day. And yes, sometimes our dream time is a culmination or a review of perhaps what happened during the course of the day, or what it is that we're reading in the headline news. Our body, our psyche can process it. But there's a difference when the soul calls. I feel as though when the soul is calling us in the dream time, it's something very deep that touches our heart, and a sense of knowing that goes beyond perhaps our rational thought, our corporate thought, right? Our trained thought, our religious thought. Because sometimes when the soul comes calling during our dream time, it can speak to us about things perhaps that we haven't remembered, maybe from another lifetime or from a very long time ago in this lifetime. But it's bringing things to our attention when the soul speaks. Sometimes when the soul speaks in dream times, it's bringing to our attention something perhaps that needs to be healed from this lifetime, perhaps another lifetime, if you are someone who understands reincarnation. But when the soul speaks through dreams and visits and apparitions and inclinations, inspirations, most people, I believe, ignore it. Maybe they ignore it because they don't want to listen to what it is that the soul has to say. Or perhaps they've been told that the soul really doesn't have a voice. We're here for one go around and make the most of it. But for many of us, when the soul speaks, we stop for a moment to listen, to be with it, to consider what it is that the soul is saying. Even if the soul is saying, you're needed here right now. Your path is taking you over here for the time being. Your path is leading you on an exploration that your soul knows that you are now ready for. And perhaps it's the exploration of healing. Perhaps it's the exploration of integration, of expansion, of self-realization, or of being of service with the gifts and talents that you have been given. Carla Jo is saying, skunk has been walking through my dreams. Skunk equals stand your ground. Just don't know where I am to be standing. Yes, and so where is it? Where is it? And so some meditation time about standing and where to stand, where to be. And yet, Carla Jo, I would venture that at the deepest core of who you are, you know exactly where you're being asked to stand, or to stand up for, or to stand up to. Sometimes it just takes us a moment to consider that, oh, aha, that is it. You're a wise woman. And so the skunk appearing has a message. I happen to believe that everything in the universe has a message for us. Yeah, sometimes a cow is just a cow, but I happen to think that Spirit is always speaking to us through nature, through our dreams. Our soul has many avenues through which to communicate with us. If it is true, I believe it's true, that we are related to every living thing, seen and unseen, then the alliances that our soul has on the earthly plane and the unearthly plane, the alliances, the correspondences, give us many venues for receiving messages, for receiving guidance. Some people say, I'm just waiting for a spiritual inspiration. I just wish my spirit would tell me what to do. Why isn't my soul guiding me? Well, usually our soul is guiding us. Our spirit is trying to lead us. And yet, right, in our humanness, we may cast it aside, shrug it off, not want to look at it. I'll get to that at a later date. And our soul and our spirit will continue to speak. Okay, yes, I see nothing on your website about the class this weekend. Yeah, the class this weekend isn't something that I publicized. Hello, Alexandria. And Lisa's saying, I was making out with George Clooney last night. Still trying to figure out what that one means. Oh, goodness, I love that. And Carla Jo, hello, Margaret Spooner. Yeah, do have an idea or two. That's the problem. And skunk is quietly walking. Yeah, our spirit and our soul will send us clues. Even when our rational mind says, oh, I really don't want to. No, really? I don't want to do that. I don't want to be there. I don't want to proceed in that way. And our soul will say, but in order for you to fully realize, to fully shine your light, to become the most that you came here to be, and to offer to the world the most of your light that you came to offer, this is where perhaps, there are many paths, perhaps this is where you need to be. And Rob is saying that Spirit is leading him into some strange places now, perhaps places we've not considered. A lot of times our soul can propose to us situations and things that we've not ever considered, because perhaps what we're being asked to consider is outside of the scope of anything that we were brought up to believe or indoctrinated into or exposed to. And so sometimes all of a sudden our spirit can lead us to a place, a situation, a meeting. I love those meetings. Don't you love it when the soul has you meet up with someone? Right, for just a moment, perhaps longer, only to find out that the soul that you've met up with, we do entertain angels unaware many, many times. And it's our soul, it's our spirit doing the handiwork of guiding us in cahoots with. When somebody says to me, Denise, I know it was no coincidence that I met that person. Denise, I had that dream and it changed my life. Well, how did it change your life? Well, it had me consider something new, something different about myself, perhaps something greater or in depth about myself that I never considered before I had that dream. Particularly when people have a dream in which somebody that they love who is crossed over appears in a dream. That can be life-changing. That's also, I believe, orchestrated by the soul, orchestrated by all of creation, right? For those magical moments to happen. Hey, Tracy, it's good to see you. Good to see you. I didn't want a new puppy, but lo and behold, here's Robin. Yes. Our spirit and our soul speak to us, bring us into alignment in such magnificent ways. Sometimes it is, with my clients that were just here, the mom was out on the lanai, out on the deck in the enchanted forest. She had never been here before. And when we were done, she was waiting out there and she said to me, Denise, this forest of yours is magical. Do you know that? It is absolutely magical out there. While I was sitting here doing paperwork, I also saw a family of turkeys, groundhogs, some foxes, some deer. Denise, it's magical. Did you know that? I said, I did know that it's magical. I call it the enchanted forest. And I pay attention to what the animals are telling me. I pay attention to which of the animals come forward. I happen to believe that animals are so intelligent they don't need to speak. In our humanness, usually we need to speak in order to convey something. For me, animals convey what needs to be conveyed without having to speak. They just get to be. And that was the case this evening. As I stood out and took a deep breath before I logged into the show. Hey, Barbie Cornell, it's good to see you. Gee, I never really noticed. Yeah. The enchanted forest here is quite magical. Taking a look here in the chat room. And the dreams seem to be very strong with great messages, or am I the only one? No, I believe that those of us that are dreamers, are really finding ourselves deep within the dream and finding the dream coming closer. My very first client of the day was a young man, a lovely young man in his mid-30s. And he looked at me and he said, I hope that you just don't think that I'm odd when I talk to you about the way that Spirit speaks to me and the way that my soul speaks to me. He looked at me and he said, Denise, did you realize that letters of words and numbers speak? Do you know that numbers and letters actually speak? They vibrate. And so if I touch a word, it vibrates. I don't even have to look at the word, but the vibration of the word that I'm touching will vibrate through my body, and I can read the word, not because I'm looking at it, because the letters are speaking to me in tone and vibration. I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. You only have to look at the Holy Zohar, right? That amazing, mystical Jewish teaching. I have a copy of the Zohar, and the teaching of the Zohar, the Hebrew teaching of the book of the Zohar, is that you don't have to read the book. You simply put the book next to your bed or where you meditate, and the frequency of the letters, right, in Hebrew, come into your being, and you simply understand. Yeah. Those are wisdom teachers that many of us who are dreamers, thunder dreamers, seers, sensitives, are being bathed in right now. We are being bathed in it. This young man and I said to Todd after he left, I said, I would say that he is the most profoundly gifted person that I've ever spoken with. Profoundly. If there's such a thing as a spiritual savant, I was speaking to him today. And I in the course of our conversation, what he was really coming to me for was guidance for his soul and his spirit in this lifetime. Knowing how to set good boundaries. Strong, good, healthy boundaries in the unseen and the seen world. Sometimes our spirit speaks to us from so many crevasses in the universe that it can be overwhelming to our human brain. And I know that some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes there is so much activity going on in the unseen realm that our spirit has a problem understanding what it is that's being shared, what it is that we're being led to or led to consider, to look into. And when our spirit speaks from so many origins all at the same time, and our mind sounds like endless chatter, we do have the ability to say quiet. You know, we talk about quieting the mind, calming the waters of emotion, calming the winds of thought, bringing ourselves to center, because sometimes the soul has so much to say all at one time. If we consider that our soul, I always use the illusion of the disco ball, that our soul is like the disco ball that has all of these wonderful mirrors and fragments, and we're dancing all over God's creation in our fullness. And some days our entire fullness can feel like as though it's talking to us all at one time, right? And this is where the importance of meditation or mantra or Lectio Divina, right, as Sister Irene taught me. Contemplation, bringing ourselves back into a focus when so many aspects of the soul are speaking to us and guiding us throughout time. I'm hoping that that is making sense, what I'm saying, and I'm not just rambling. Maybe I am. And Catherine is saying, hello, Danielle. Hello, Danielle. Good to have you with us tonight. Hey, Todd. Hi, honey. My husband is in the chat. Tracy is saying, I was just thinking of that today. In the dreaming, the mind takes that, buzzes all day. Thank you. I forget to ask to be quiet. Yes, sometimes we absolutely have to ask and command the voices to be quiet. Our soul is so magnificent. When we think about the fact, at least I believe, that each and every one of us is born out of the heart and mind of creation. That's pretty magnificent. Call that creation God or Allah or Wakantanka. We're all born of that. It's pretty amazing when we're feeling really small or insignificant to think about that. Ruthie. She's saying, I thought that might be your man. Yep, that's my man. Todd Francisco, he's my man. The beauty of who we are, and this really was the onus of my conversation with this young man today who's so profoundly gifted, was that at all times we are in control. We can be in control. Some people don't like to be in control of themselves. Some people like chaos and mayhem in their physical life as well as their spiritual life. And that's their choice to like mayhem and drama. That just doesn't work for me. But having said that, we are always in the driver's seat. I said to him, when you are visited by spirit that is malfeasant, command it away. If somebody showed up at your front door with a loaded AK-47, loaded for bear, coming to pay a visit to you with that loaded gun, are you going to welcome them in? Are you going to shrivel up and shrink? Or are you going to keep the door shut and call 911? When our soul is speaking and when our soul is dancing throughout the vastness of God's creation, our light shines, everybody. Your light shines. Your light shines, and like a candle attracting moths, your soul, your spirit, as it is communicating throughout the vast expanse of all that is, you are attracting to you the people, the places, things, seen and unseen, the lessons that your soul wishes to dance through, to walk through, to stumble through at all times. And we must always remember that our soul, when we focus our work, our life on the light, to the best of our ability in our humanness, we must always remember that moths are drawn to a flame. Hey, Jan. Hey, Rocky. Oh, good, my niece is on. My niece, Jan. I just love her. I miss going up north, too, Rocky, just saying. Say hello to your mom for me, will you? And kiss those babies for me. So we have a choice when those things happen. How do I want to say this? This conversation that I had with this young man really I've been thinking about it all day between clients. Thank you. Hello, Laurel. And it reminded me of something that long ago my spiritual director at the Dominican Center said to me. She said to me, Denise, I would never want to be you. And she said it very seriously. I would never want to be you. Well, I said, geez, Charmaine, what are you talking about? You would never want to be me. She said, do you realize that every day of your life, the darkness is going to test you. It's going to challenge the gifts that you've been given, the charismata, every day. And every day you're going to have to listen to the voice of your soul, your intuition, your spirit, and be on guard. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about this because there's a reason that it's being brought up right now in my mind. For anyone that is out there listening to me right now, and let me just say that sometimes the gifts of the Spirit, the charismatic, can feel like a heavy burden. It can feel like a very heavy burden. And as my client this morning said to me, sometimes, Denise, I just want to leave. I just want to leave this planet. I just want to go home and be done with this. And I looked at him and I said, if you do that, if you choose to take your own life, the darkness wins. The darkness wins. At all times, for most of us, our light is challenged. It can be challenged by gossip. It can be challenged by hate, ignorance, racism. Our light is challenged every day. And if we do not let the light prevail, the darkness wins. Where there is no light present, the darkness prevails. Hello, Donna girl. It's good to see you. So I said to him, please don't do that. And if you ever feel as though you have come to that place, please reach out to somebody that cares about you. If there is no one available, reach out to me. Do not let the darkness prevail. And he said to me, well, sometimes I just have to numb myself to all of this. I just have to numb myself to all of this. And I said, well, the tragedy of being a sensitive or a seer can be wanting to numb ourselves to what we're sensitive to. We have to learn to maintain balance. We have to listen to what our soul is telling us. And when the darkness comes calling, the darkness of depression, suicidal thoughts, addiction, whatever it happens to be, first and foremost, focus on your inner light and command it away. You have no place with me. You are not welcome here. And he looked at me and he said, no one has ever told me that I could do that before. No one has ever told me that I could do that. And I said, well, as your elder, I am telling you, you can do that. And reach out. Dial the 911. Dial the 911. Whether it is the literal 911, or it is a friend, or it is the suicide hotline. Do not let your light be snuffed out because of the darkness of addiction or depression or illness. Reach out and the light will respond in kind. Well, it was a wonderful time that he and I had in talking about the soul, and sometimes the way that our soul, our spirit is tested. And there are times when we just want to hide under a rock or cry uncle, throw in the towel. We've all been there. And yet our soul calls us to remain. Our spirit calls us to remain. The light calls us to remain. Each and every one of us came here with a magnificent purpose, and not everybody's purpose is to be Oprah Winfrey, right? Sometimes our purpose is to be a really good human being, a responsible, accountable, loving, nurturing human being. To call bullshit when we see it, right? All children are our children. Boy, if you want to get my knickers in a knot, mistreating children, that's a whole other show, isn't it? Sometimes our soul is sparked and it's called. You know, how many of us here in the United States seeing those babies sparked? Those are babies. Those are somebody's babies. Those are children. Sometimes our soul has us encounter those situations and we're never ever the same. And before we know it, we find our soul's avocation. We find ourselves calling our congresswoman or a senator or whomever to voice on behalf of our soul. Our soul knows we're all related. Our soul knows that, Mitakoye Oyasi. We know we are related to everything. The soul knows that, and the soul is always trying to bring us back to center of that. And sometimes the way that we are brought back to center, boy, is called the dark night of the soul. Finding our way back to center through the darkness, to the light through the darkness. It's most often a challenge. As I said to this young man today, you're being challenged. You're being taught now the ability of your light to conquer the shadow, to overcome the shadow. Not that we, there's always this debate in spirituality about don't forget your shadow. Well, I've got a shadow. You can see it right behind me. Yes, we all have high depths and we all have low, inky, whatever. It's all there. But what I'm saying is we do not have to succumb to the darkness of ignorance or whatever it happens to be, of malfeasance, either unseen or seen. And our spirit knows the way. The spirit that we have, our soul, that overlights our spirit, that overlights all that we are, the vastness of our soul, overlighting this spirit that ignites us from within in this current incarnation. See, the spirit to me is one of those facets on the disco ball, and the soul is the whole ball. So our inspiration, that inner light, can be ignited by things. It is tested by things. And it's in those testings that we grow, that the spirit and the soul grows. My last client this evening, a beautiful young woman, I looked at her and I said, "Oh my, you are a very old soul." Well, how do you know that? Sometimes you can feel an old soul because you know that the soul of the person that you're with has been tested, right? Has walked through many a fire. And sometimes it's the youngest people that we can encounter that have walked through lifetime after lifetime of fire, of forging. Our soul will lead us through it if we stop to listen, if we get quiet. And by the way, not everybody is going to like where our soul leads us. Just saying. Not everybody is going to like that perhaps we've decided that we're going to take a little venture down, Route 66 or whatever it happens to be. Hey, Kathy Skirmerhorn. Not everybody's always happy with that. And you know what? That's okay. Because it's not their soul's avocation to go down Route 66. Their soul's avocation could be M22. We don't know. But what happens when we don't listen to the voice of our soul? I've talked a few times about Sister Angela Rose that we all met when we were in Assisi. Actually, we were at La Verna. Sister Angela Rose. So what is my soul, Auntie? Your soul is a leader. It is a warrior woman, Jan. That is your soul. Your soul is so old. Your soul is so old. And this is why, Janelle, that people depend on you. And you get dog tired of people depending on you because everybody depends on you. Everybody comes to you for insight, for wisdom, for leadership, because you are an ancient, old soul. Recently I saw you with Dathan's new baby, Stephanie's new baby. There was a photo on Facebook. And the look that you had holding, I haven't met my new Takoja yet, but there you were holding this little angel girl. And the very first thought that came to my mind, Jan, when I saw that photo is how many babies you have held throughout eternity. One thing I've noticed about you is your ease with babies, with being a mother, with being grandma, auntie. Your ease with children, particularly the little bitty ones. That's ancient. That's ancient. And that's why so many young people find you, whether they know they found you or not. It's why you raise so many children, so many young people call you mom, call you auntie, call you unchi. That's why you're ancient. And I'm really glad that I get to see you in a couple of weeks. You're old. You're old. All right, what have we got going on here? Rob, the powers that be on this plane will see to it that they make your life as miserable as the light will allow them to get away with. And that is true. Oh my goodness. And hey, Kelly Spencer, it's your anniversary. You're supposed to be out to dinner or something, or did you do that already? Hey, Nicole. Nicole is saying, yeah, some of her friends call her the baby whisperer. Well, that's how Jan is. It is amazing to me how she is around young children. Young children can be acting up, and she has such a calming presence about her. It's that nurturer, the old ancient nurturer. You're also an old soul, Nicole, but you know that. That children automatically quiet down. They're at peace because they know they're secure with her. And that's a gift. That's an amazing gift. But yeah, our spirit sometimes gets a little confused by our humanness because, people will test us. Test us. One time I was with Lori Bruno out in Salem. Lori Bruno is the hereditary high priestess out in Salem, Massachusetts. She comes from hey, Lily Nicole. There's my other niece. It's niece night. And I said to her at one time, I said, Lori, be straight up with me. Does it ever get easier? And she looked at me. She's 78 years old now. She goes, no. She laughed when she said no. She said, no, it never gets easier. I said, well, crap. I was hoping you were going to tell me all of this just gets easier. And she said, no. You always have to remember, Denise, that the degree to which you wield the light will always be matched by that same degree of darkness in order for you to overcome it and shine your light even brighter. I was like, oh dear. The good news is we're all equipped. Although we do get tested. We do get tested. As that young man was leaving me this morning, I looked at him and I said, maybe I'm being your mom right now. Hey, Debbie. But your light is needed on this earth. All of us. Our light is needed on this earth. And I've said it and I will say it again, and I'm going to say it right now. The greatest teachers do walk through the greatest fires. How else are you able to teach another person with authenticity? Because if you ain't walked through a fire, you have no business telling anybody else how to get through that fire. It's like I always used to laugh. Priests, really, Roman Catholic priests doing the pre-marriage training. I remember I said to Father Fox, Father, I don't mean to be irreverent, but I guess I am. What are you doing teaching marriage counseling? And he looked at me and he said, you just have a way of just saying it, don't you? And I said, well, I guess, yeah. So I've heard. He said, I know it seems a little outrageous, doesn't it? And I said, yeah, it does. So my whole point in that is, and here's the thing. We're all having a human experience. Every one of us is having this human experience because we picked it. Really? And when we think about it, Lily's saying, fire, I'm fighting my way back from hell. And the good news is, my beautiful niece, that you're coming back. That you are coming back. And here's the other thing for you to consider is that you are so incredibly sensitive, beautifully sensitive to spirit, to other people, that it's very easy for your heart to be broken. I would say this to Janelle as well. Both very strong women, both of you, but you also love incredibly deeply. The good news is, Leslie, you are coming back from that. The great news is that we all love you. The greatest teachers walk through the greatest fires. And here's the other thing that I truly believe is that sometimes the brightest lights are called to shine in the darkest places. Some of my favorite people that I love more than anyone on this earth plane are people who have overcome addiction to meth, to heroin, to LSD, to sex, to gambling, and sometimes fall off the wagon and find their way back on. Sometimes, just a couple of weeks ago, right here in our home, me and Todd, helping somebody back from that journey of their soul through the darkness. And as I told my beautiful friend, I cannot do it for you. I cannot get well for you, but I sure as hell can love you while you're finding your way to wellness. And he just looked at me. He was speechless. And we waited for him to come to a place of sobriety where, you know what I'm saying? So for those of us that our soul's calling is to be there for those while they're walking through the dark night of the soul. Sometimes the only thing that we can do is to be present and to be present in the fullness of our light and our love while those that we love are walking through. One day at a time, absolutely, Jan. One day at a time. Sometimes one breath at a time. Sometimes one breath at a time. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Sometimes these thoughts can creep into our mind that say the world would be better without you. Your family would be better without you, blah, blah, blah. And that's not true. That is a lie. That is a lie. The world is not better without any of us. We need one another. We need the cumulative love that all of us bring to this earth plane. And that is simply true. Our soul knows that. Our spirit knows that. Years ago, and good for you, Rochelle, 3 years for you, 7 days for Lily. Fantastic. Every moment of our life is an opportunity to begin again. Every moment of our life is an opportunity to begin again. We fall down, we get back up. It's another opportunity. Every breath is another opportunity. Our soul wishes to be here. Our spirit wishes to be here. Years ago, I went through a bout of depression with my daughter, Elise. And we had a group of young kids up at the stables a year or so ago. And she just figured that the world would be better without her. And so And I had never heard her speak about it, and so now I can share the story. But we had a group of Anishinaabe kids that came for a visit to be with the horses. And Elise stood in front of all of these young people, and she said, you know, you're all needed here. And there was a time when I thought that the world didn't need me. And my mom stopped me. I literally stopped her in the moment. I walked in. By the grace of God, Denise, walk into her bedroom. Walk in there right now, Denise. Okay. And after I took her to the hospital, and she considered whether or not she needed to be admitted, although she was under 18 at the time. So I was having a conversation with her. She's a wise woman. She looked at me at 17 in front of the psychiatrist and she said, you know what I just realized, Mother? I said, no, daughter, I don't. What did you just realize? She said, my body doesn't want to die. My soul doesn't want to die. I said, well, what wants to die? She said, this preconceived notion about what I thought my life should be like, that needs to die, and I need to live the life that I've been given. Well, the psychiatrist did one of these numbers at me. Of course, I started, and I looked at her and I said, very good, Elise. Your soul doesn't want to die. Your spirit doesn't want to die. But there's something about your life that is saying, please let me go. Please let me go. And that was 8 years ago. On Thanksgiving Eve. Those are one of those things that you never forget. There it is, right? It's not my soul or spirit that wants to die, Mom. My body doesn't want to die. But I need to let go of this preconceived notion of what what my life is supposed to be like. I never thought that I'd be living with a single mom. I never thought about that, Mom. And the conversation began. When we hear those thoughts that come to us, they come and they're alive. And sometimes we have to say, be gone with you. Get out. Get out. The greatest lights are always confronted with the greatest challenges. How can you walk through the dark night? And you know, as Elise was sharing this story with all of these young people, there were a couple of local tribal elders that were there listening to her. And Elise was holding her horse because her horse helped her stay grounded, her horse Bo. And there were tears, the elders were. And afterwards, some of the young people, walked up to Elise and said, thank you for having the courage to tell that story, because I've thought of that myself. And I never thought that it's not my body that doesn't want to die. It's not my soul that wants to die, but something in my world, in my thought process, needs to go. And I was so proud of her in that moment. And I thought, all those years ago, how could I have known that we would be standing here in the stable with the horses with 40 young people? And she, for the first time, is telling the story right out loud and sharing it, and it changed people's lives. So, she's also a very spiritual young lady. Both of my kids are of course they are. Spirit is part of our life. It can't not be part of our life. It's part of our ancestry. It's part of our lineage. Hey, Doreen. Fire is so scary, but you can rise. Yeah, that's right. It can be scary. Yep. Overcoming the darkness is the hard part. For me, it was not the addiction, but a life-changing event. But Spirit will place you where you need to be. Absolutely, Doreen. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Our soul is so wise, and even as it is traipsing us or dragging us, because let's face it, sometimes we feel dragged. I have felt dragged by my hair through some circumstances. And I always think, okay, Creator, okay, Spirit, I'm not quite certain what this is all about right now, but I'm going to trust that it has there's something bigger going on, and I just need to get through this one breath at a time, one moment at a time. But here I go. Here I go. I remember the first time after I had the stroke in 2004, and I had just learned how to walk again, and I was asked to lead a tour. For any of you that are listening right now that work for Hope Network Rehabilitation Centers, thank you. The folks at Hope Network helped me to learn how to write again and to walk again. And, even on the day where they said, well, we have good news and we have bad news. And I said, well, there are blessings and bad news too, so let me have it all. But years after that, I was asked to lead a tour of the newspaper of a group from Hope Network. And they said to me, Dee, will you give the newspaper a tour because we know you are a graduate of Hope Network? And I said, I'd be happy to do that. And I walked into the conference room, and here were most of everybody that was in that room had spinal cord injuries or had brain injuries. And I looked around the room. There was one man in particular whose head was in a halo. It was in a halo. And he was paralyzed from the neck down. But he looked at me and he said, Denise, I have a question for you. And I said, is it a question about the newspaper? He said, no. Denise, do you believe in angels? And I looked at him and I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. It's not that I believe in them. I know that they exist. Why do you ask? And he said, well, when I dove into that pool, he said, that's how this all happened. When I dove into that pool and I could feel myself drowning, I felt the presence of somebody, but Denise, that somebody felt like a being made out of light. And the next thing that I knew, I was lying on the side of the pool. And nobody could really explain to me. I couldn't explain to anybody what happened underneath the pool, but I was still alive. I couldn't feel my body, but I know what happened. And I know that the reason that I'm here is because there was an angel that helped to save me. And I looked at this young man, his name was Stephen, and I said, Stephen, why do you suppose? Why do you suppose that the angel helped to save you? He said, because I think I'm going to teach people how to persevere. And I'm going to teach people about the miracles in life. And I said, well, you know what, everybody? I'm a graduate of Hope Network. And they all looked at me. And I said, yeah, it wasn't that long ago that I was walking with a walker. And I graduated to a cane after I could learn how to tie my shoes again. And here I am taking you all on a tour. And they looked at me. And a woman looked at me. She had also had a stroke, and she said, so there is hope for me. I said, absolutely. And I remember thinking in that moment, if I had gone through the dark night of the soul of left brain stroke and being paralyzed on the right side of my body for all of those months, in order for in that moment to give that woman hope and for Stephen to share his story of the angel in the pool. Yeah. Nicole, Lily. Okay, hey, Bonnie. Oh, that Michael. He is something else. And Bonnie, it was so good to see you, as it always is. Lily's saying, I lost all faith, belief, and trust in everyone and everything. When I went home for help, I didn't know how to ask for help, or even if I wanted help, I just knew I had to go home. Absolutely. Absolutely, to go home. to go home. Your family loves you. That land loves you. The spirit of the land. Right? It's right behind me, by the way. There it is. Painted on my wall. The spirit of the land loves you. Your soul knows the spirit of that land. Your blood knows the spirit of that land, and your blood knows the spirits of that land. Your blood knows that. Your DNA needs that. It requires it. And so, so we can get so busy in our lives that we have to remember that we need to be in those places where our blood knows us and where the land knows our blood. And family, speaking of soul, I'll never forget the first time that I saw Barbara Dullknife. I'll never forget it as long as I live, and I was there with Linda Grizak. And Jan, your mom walked in, and it took my breath away. And I looked at Linda and I said, oh my God, Linda, I know her. Makes me choked up. And she said, how do you know her? You've never met Barbara Dullknife. And I said, my soul knows her. We've known each other before. And I was so fascinated looking at her. And then that evening we were in Inipi. And I was one of the last ones that came into Inipi, of the women coming in. And I heard this voice say, Denise, are you in here? And I said, I am. And I heard this voice say, come over here and sit by me. And I lit my Bic, and it was your mother. And she said, I want you to come sit by me. And our soul and our spirit speaks to us about who is family. Our soul and our spirit speaks to us about who is our family and who feels like home. Sometimes our soul feels home in people. And there are a lot of people that feel that if you don't share the exact same blood, that those aren't your people. I completely disagree with that, because the soul knows your people. That reminds me, when I was up at Standing Rock with your Uncle Guy, and I was sitting around the fire one evening, and George was there, Boss was there, Carla was, the kids were all there, Angie. And George started asking me some questions about me being an adopted person and some things that were going on in my life at that time. And Boss, he's kind of a tough guy, as you know. Boss looked at me and he said, Auntie. And I looked at him and he said, for as long as you are alive, we are your family. And we will never, ever leave you. Ever. And George looked at me and he said, that's right, Auntie. And your Uncle Guy just sat there with a smile on his face, and Angie was smoking, and it was the way that Boss said it. It's that place that resonates in your soul and says, these are your people. This is your family. Family is home. We can feel home in family, in people. I hope that makes sense. And family loves us. Whether it's the family that we're born into or the family that is brought to us. The family that is brought to us by our soul. That's right, Stoic Boss He had tears running down his eyes, down his face as he looked at me and said that. And clearly I haven't forgotten it. It's one of those. Yeah. That's the gift for me, when people say, what's it like to be an adopted person? Well, I guess I was born into this world so that my soul would find my family. I know what my blood lineage is now. You do 23andMe and you get all that info. But they have no way of telling me where to find family members because all of that is what it is, And yet my soul brought me to family and brought family to me. Isn't that marvelous? See, I think that's marvelous. And the moment that boss said to that, was probably the most difficult time in my life. At that time when I was up at Standing Rock, it was personally one of the most difficult dark nights of the soul in my life. He didn't know that. And his soul was speaking to him, you need to say something to this woman. Yeah. And I'm glad that I'm in your family. What a blessing. What a blessing. And when I go, exactly, Lily, like your dad. Oh my God, my brother-in-law, Ken. Well, you've all heard me talk about my brother-in-law, Ken. I remember the first time that I met him. Del Marie was making Indian tacos and Ken was cutting up the tomatoes and the onions. And we were going to have a Indian taco feast. And there he was. And his sense of humor was so dry, you never knew whether he was kidding or whether he was serious. An amazing man. An amazing man. And I remember him talking to me about all of his children, right? You and Rio and Sean and his grandchildren, and the sense of pride. Yeah. Family, our soul knows family. Because frankly, we can have blood family members that we think, really, was I just plopped here from another planet into this group of freaks? Because I don't belong here. My soul does not feel comfortable with this group of people that shares the same last name with me or the same address with me. I'm pretty sure we're not related, but I feel really good about being with these other people. That feels like my family. The soul knows. The soul knows. It's like, when I walk into the children's home, gather our children home. Oh, goodness. All children are our children. I believe that. We are adults. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Our souls know one another. All children are our children. With that, everybody. That's right. Yes. Your father, Ken, your dad, home, family, home. Somebody asked me recently, where are you when you know that you're home? There are a couple of places, and for me, what takes my breath away is when I'm driving in, from Michigan and I'm coming across and I see the Badlands for the first time. Doesn't matter how many times I've driven that way, doesn't matter how many times I've seen it for the first time, my soul takes a deep breath and says, you're home. The soul knows, the rational mind doesn't always know it. With that, everybody, thank you for the way that your soul shines, the way that you allow it. And if nothing else tonight, please do understand that your light is needed here. Your love, your light, who you are is needed here. And to quote a magnificent elder out at Arval's place a few years back, he said, he was talking about becoming sober. And he said that after 28 years of trying to become sober, he became sober, but he also became sober in that he lost all sense of humor and blah, blah, blah. He was really dry. And his friends were saying, boy, you got really holy. Like, are you a holy man right now? What happened to you? You're no fun anymore. You got sober, but you're no fun anymore. At which time the man reported, you know how they like to talk in between rounds at the Sundance. He said, at that point, an elderly walked up to me. He said he was a Wichasha Wakan, a holy man, walked up to me and said, if you wanted to be that holy, you should have stayed in spirit. And he said, what are you talking about? And he said, do you know how many spirits, how many souls would like to have the experience of being human right now? Don't be so holy. Have some fun. Yes, be sober, but have fun, have joy, laugh. Don't take life so seriously that you forget to have joy. Don't take life so seriously that you forget to have joy, and know that home is where you find it, and where you find home is where the love is. Your soul knows. With that, everybody, blessings be. Have a beautiful evening.